2 p.m. and I'd like to call the May 20th, 2020 board meeting to order and remind everyone to please mute your audio when you're not speaking, and please do also state your name prior to making a comment or a motion and a second for an action item. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that each commissioner please respond with a here when I call out his name to confirm attendance. Commissioner Doan?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
Here.
Commissioner Sanders?
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Here.
Thank you. And I am Commissioner Bagnall. I too am here. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, we will have the reports by the Chief Executive Officer and management staff. Take it away, Tom.
Sorry, it takes a moment for me to unmute myself. So a couple updates for you. The first is the Portland Cryptosporidium results for the month of April 2020. Portland Water Bureau reported 2 Cryptosporidium oocysts detected in a water sample from the Bull Run Headworks. This far in May, no Cryptosporidium oocysts have been detected. Additional details may be found at www.portlandoregon.gov/water/crypto results. The state has determined that the public does not need to take additional protections at this time. Portland Water Bureau will continue increased sampling 4 times per week until at least 3 weeks pass without any detections. And then the other item, and this has been a continuum, but just our COVID-19 response. We continue to serve all the customers through all of a myriad of tasks, but not limited to inspection of meters, flushing mains, conducting locates, testing water samples, fielding customer calls, processing invoices, and managing the Willamette Water Supply Program. There's a lot of work getting done, and it's all very beneficial work. The last I checked, I think we're somewhere around 40 miles of main have been flushed, and I don't know how many valves have been exercised, but it's been a lot. So it's all been very valuable work that's been needed to get done, and we're getting it done. As a reminder, TVWD, we've suspended shutoffs and late fees to protect water service during this time through the COVID-19 pandemic. We are asking customers who are experiencing a financial hardship, we are asking them to please call customer service at 503-848-3000 during business hours, or email customerservice@tvwd.org. Later tonight, you're going to hear from Mike Jacobs, our risk management coordinator, and the district's emergency operations center chief, that's going to provide an update on our phased office reopening. So looking at how we're going to get back into the office. I also wanted to give an update real briefly on the WIFIA refinancing. Discussions with Senator Merkley's office have continued. And they're continuing discussions with the EPA. So far, things are looking pretty promising that would allow us and all WIFIA loan recipients who have not yet drawn on their loan to be able to obtain a new loan rate. So this is still under discussion, but has the potential to save significant dollars over the life of the loan for our customers.
I think that is absolutely huge, and I want to applaud you and Paul in particular for continuing to go after that.
Thank you. We're pretty excited about it, and the nice part is this is going to benefit us, Hillsborough, and likely Beaverton. And just so you know, as a side note, if we refinance today, the interest rate would be at about 1.42%, which would probably save us in excess of about $160 million over the life of the loan. So it will be fantastic if we can ultimately get this done. And then the other one is the COVID-19 relief funds. Governor Brown announced this week that special districts are eligible for the COVID-19 relief funds that were part of the federal stimulus aimed at local and state governments. So when that bill got drafted back in DC, there was nothing in there that recognized special districts. Us with the SDAO and all the other special districts in the state worked with the governor's office to be recognized that any funds that are eligible within those relief funds should also apply to us. And we've been successful. We've been tracking all of our costs associated with this event. And we will be submitting for reimbursements that qualify. And I was corrected today in a meeting I was in today. It does include some personnel time and not really insignificant amount either. So the overall amount of money that we are going to get from this potentially is only, probably around the $75,000 range, but it's still, $75,000 that we should, under what the intent of those relief funds were for. So it does help us cover some of our costs and potentially some future costs that we may face in order to maintain the social distancing as we move forward. And you'll hear more about that later tonight. So unless
sorry, Tom, to interrupt, but is there any chance that some of the front office remodeling costs might be recovered under that? Because I recognize that the plans were made before we even knew what COVID-19 was, but at the same time, it's like y'all were prescient. You were putting up barriers between customer service and the public.
I'm being told, it's amazing how efficient the staff is. So I was immediately sent a message and I was told no, because it was in the budget before. So the only expenses that qualify are things that were not originally in the budget. So unfortunately, great idea, but no, it wouldn't qualify.
More like nice try.
Yeah. So unless there's any other questions for me, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew Karlstrom, our customer service manager, to present the safety minute and department report.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You are there.
All right. Thank you. So I was talking to someone recently at TVWD who had been bicycling on some windy, hilly roads and made the comment that, maybe it'd be best to dial that back a bit to stay out of the ER, and which is probably pretty good advice right now. And it made me think about some things we've talked about before, like other hazards, yard hazards, which is a good thing to think about this time of year, and staying out of the ER during COVID. So COVID-19, we all know preventing accidents that require medical attention will help the medical system during the pandemic. It puts less strain on first responders. There'll be less demand on medical personnel and facilities that could be taxed at key times. And it could also help flatten the curve of infection. So I'm going to give you a few tips for yard safety to keep you out of the ER. So the fifth one, this is going 5 to 1, is dressing appropriately. So avoid loose clothing or jewelry. It can be cotton equipment. Wear long pants, long sleeves, sturdy footwear with soles that won't slip. Eye protection, heavy gloves, and hearing protection if you're using loud or motor-driven equipment. Number 4, we all know hand tools aren't always safer. Make sure they're in good working order. Broken pieces can cut or injure you. You don't want to have to go in and get stitches. Make sure your equipment is properly sized so you're not getting undue strains, back pain, and overuse injuries. Number 3, ladders. Respect heights. So when you're working at heights, read the instructions for the ladder and make sure you're ensuring proper usage. Number 2, owner's manual. Read it. So before you're starting your power equipment, check the manual. Make sure all the safety features are working properly, And the last one, number 1, is never, ever text and mow. And that's the safety moment for tonight.
Did you just
Very,
make that
very
one
visual.
Well, you said
I tell you what, though, Andrew, the whole don't wear jewelry when you're working in the yard, that one's been hard on me. I don't have anywhere else to wear my big jewels, so I tend to be the best dressed gardener in the neighborhood.
Mowing the lawn in flip-flops, that's great.
So,
okay, moving to the customer service department report. Andrew, you're still on.
I'm still on. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the adaptations we've done in operations in the customer service department. And as you know, we've got 5 major functions in the department right now. There's the contact center, customer service and billing, field customer service, which is meter readers and field reps. We've got communications and public affairs. We have conservation services, and finally we have the customer information system, or CIS, project. So under COVID conditions, we're really trying to maintain, and we have been able to continue service to customers, our core operations and projects. And as you know, TVWD has prioritized the safety of both customers and staff. And I'm going to give you a few examples of some of the adaptations we've made for the current conditions. All right, so customer service and billing. We've continued the service under vastly changing conditions. We're definitely continuing to provide empathetic support of customers that are in difficult situations. And we've moved all of our call and contact center operations almost off-site. And with IT services, we've been able to implement Microsoft Voice, which allows us to route district calls to the district to reps that are now working remotely. We've rapidly implemented new paperless processes because we don't have access to printers as we did at one point. And our primary internal communication for this group, as well as the department and district, is Microsoft Teams. Field customer service, some of the items were single user vehicles. We don't want staff to be sharing vehicles either. We definitely don't want 2 people in a vehicle, but we also don't want people changing vehicles. So we're avoiding having to deep cleaning and wipe down between use. We've changed how work is dispatched. We've changed the daily meter reading operation setup, and that one's interesting. We have these handheld units called data caps that the meter readers use, and we have someone come in early every day to make sure they're all wiped down. We've moved our date for our field coverage schedule from daily to weekly. There's more continuity of operations and more predictability. The 3 people in the group that are able to work somewhat remotely, but not entirely for sure, are the supervisor, lead, and large meter tester. So they have a remote schedule. We're doing remote time entry for all staff, so they don't have to use shared devices. We have slightly staggered start times for staff, so they're not aggregating. And we've been really lucky to be able to have staff be able to connect with Microsoft Teams now that they all have devices that can do so. So here's an image from early on in the COVID era of field customer service staff meeting in the yard, but definitely practicing social distancing. And I thought it was just a good representation of what that actually can look like.
So they're all yelling at each other?
Well, it only looks that way. All right, communications and public affairs. This is led by Andrea Watson. One of the key staffing priorities during this time has been supporting the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. The group's been able to develop a communication plan to support staff, as well as both the development and delivery of customer messaging. They've been able to shift their work substantially off-site. They've been able to host remote staff connection events, pretty neat coffee breaks to allow people that are working more distantly to be able to connect with each other in ways they couldn't before. And that's pretty important to maintain that organizational glue. And then the group is also working with water resources to design and deliver the CCR with increased customer engagement. Conservation services continue, of course, under changing conditions. We've shifted the majority of this work also offsite, including customer rebate processing. We do have on hold right now or postponed customer consultations and fire line inspections until the EOC clears that for continuing. And then lastly, of course, the CIS project is continuing, and currently we're in contract negotiations. Definitely the COVID situation has highlighted some of the challenges we have with the legacy system and some of the features that we would really like to have right now, both internally and for customers, including the ability to easily access and report data. So the implementation will start in the summer, and one thing I wanted to highlight on that is that what's going to be drastically different from when we started this project is the implementation will be executed on somewhere in the continuum of largely to entirely remotely, and that is a challenge. It's a challenge we're up for. It's going to be coordinating between us, Clean Water Services, our vendor, our project manager, and people that are in a lot of different locations. But fortunately, our vendor also uses Microsoft Teams, and we'll be on the same platform for our communication. But we're pretty excited. It's a challenge, but we're up for it.
So does that mean the CUBE, the Center for Utility Billing Excellence, will not be in use?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to, for the moment, see how things turn out, I think, over the next couple weeks to the fall. But yeah, there's a possibility. Right now it's being used for the EOC. So what happens to the CUBE? That's a good question. We'll definitely report back when we have a definitive answer, Commissioner Bagnall. And that's the department report. Any additional questions?
Questions from other board members?
Hi, this is Jim Dolan. I'm very happy that things are running as smoothly as they are. I think that's a great credit to you and to your staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Down.
I want to echo that. That's a huge project, and to be able to continue under these conditions with no hitches is pretty wonderful. But for TVWD as a whole, it's astonishing to me that you went so quickly from full bore regular operations to only 10 to 15 people in the office at any one time and a completely different operating mode. It's amazing and pretty wonderful, really.
Yep.
So moving on, since we are done with that topic, we move to Commissioner Communications and the reports of meetings attended. So continuing with my alphabetical order thing, Commissioner Doan, would you start, please, with your report of meetings attended?
Yes, I attended the work session. I attended a meeting via Zoom of the Aloha Business Association, and then tonight's meeting.
Right, thank you. Commissioner Duggan?
I have 4 meeting days to report for this month. On May 5th, the executive session and board workshop. On the 7th, I had the WWSS meeting where we discussed the cost overrun for the bids for the raw water facility and concerns. And things went very well at that meeting, just like during our update on the 5th. I think staff has got a good handle on how to proceed going forward, and they have the support of all our partners. On the 13th, I had the Regional Water Providers Consortium Executive Committee meeting where we discussed our full board meeting agenda for the following month, where we just will have elections for officers and county representatives. We talked about how that will work with Zoom with breakout sessions, and hopefully staff will figure out a way to make that all happen. We also discussed the unfortunate news that with COVID, Wilsonville may delay rejoining the Regional Water Providers Consortium. They might request a year to formally make that join. It's unfortunate, but I think it's something that Wilsonville feels they wanted to join, but couldn't make it this year. And then today's meeting.
So, Commissioner Duggan, I have a question for you, just in case you might know, because it occurred to me, you know, as part of the whole COVID and social distancing thing, a lot of seniors are reluctant to congregate in small areas. And the city of Wilsonville has for many, many years used a group of volunteer seniors to stuff their water bills. And they buy them coffee and donuts and then pizza if the stuffing goes on too long. Do you know if they're still doing that or if they've had to go to something else during this time?
No, I don't. We had a brief update at the executive committee meeting about how various agencies are handling it, but Wilsonville wasn't represented, and there was no discussion about that. But that is interesting to see what they might be doing now.
Yeah, well, I remember I sat in on one of their sessions one time, and I just thought, I mean, it was wonderful because it's a real social event for the seniors in Wilsonville, and obviously it saves the city a whole lot of money because they haven't had to contract out bill stuffing. But now everything's different.
Yeah, well, if I have the opportunity to make any connections with Wilsonville folks, I will ask, and that is interesting. I was not aware that that's how they were able to get a significant task done, but that makes a lot of sense. And it's unfortunate.
I thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah, it's unfortunate they may not be able to do that now with so many people not able to get out.
Yeah, well, like I said, it just popped into my mind last night, hearing how many seniors were reluctant to help with ballot counting, and you can't blame them. So moving along, Commissioner Sanders, your report of meetings attended?
Yes, good evening. On the 23rd of April, I attended via Zoom meeting the Beaverton mayoral debate to hear the positions of one of our favorite partners, the city of Beaverton, and the potential mayors there. And then I have the 5th, our normal board work session meeting, and tonight's board meeting, and that would be it.
Thank you, sir. And Commissioner Schmidt, how about you? Commissioner Schmidt, are you on the call? Well, he seems to have stepped.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Okay. On the 5th, I attended the work session where the Willamette Water Supply Program was updated, and this discussion about financials due to the COVID-19 issue. And then a meeting with Bernice and Tom for the agenda review and tonight's regular board.
Thank you. And then my meetings are going to sound like a lot like other people's meetings. I attended the board work session on the 5th of May to discuss the Willamette Water Supply System agenda and operations and the financial impact of the COVID virus. And then on the 12th, I met with Dick and with the CEO to discuss agenda planning and tonight's meeting for district business. And also, I just wanted to give a heads up to the rest of the board. I think probably Commissioner Doan already knows because he's the alternate. But on May 28th at 7:30 a.m., the West Side Economic Alliance meeting is a call-in, and it's the Mayor's Forum, which they only have once a year. And that one is always especially interesting. And you can register, and it's free. And you can also submit a question to the mayors. So I will be attending that one, and I'm sure it will be fraught with interest. So also, I have to apologize. I kind of went straight to the reports of meetings attended without asking Tom if there was anything else you needed to add on the CEO's report.
There was not. Thank you for asking, though.
Okie dokie then. Are there any topics to be raised by commissioners?
I have none.
I have none.
None for me.
Okay.
None for
Public
Jim
comment.
Doan.
Thank you, guys. Public comment. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on regular agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons tonight who would like to comment? All right, hearing none, I will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require separate discussion. We have 3 items on tonight's consent agenda. Item A is to approve the April 7th, 2020 work session meetings. Item B is to approve the April 15th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. And item C is to approve the May 5th, 2020 work session minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Jim
Dick,
Doan.
I'd so move.
This is Jim Doan. I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt and a second by Commissioner Doan. So Debbie, will you please call the roll for a vote on this?
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion passes. Moving to the business agenda. We are tonight acting as the local contract review board, and we are to consider adopting resolution 10-20, which is a resolution amending the local contract review board rules. And we'll have a staff report from our chief legal counsel, Clark Balfour.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners. As President Bagnall said, you're now acting as the local contract review board, and our requested action for you tonight is to adopt a resolution which amends our rules in a couple of particulars. I think that these are probably more along the lines of housekeeping when you get right to it. And I prepared a staff report which outlines where they are. Also attached to it was a track change red line version of the rules so you could see where they are. In looking at that, I hope that that wasn't too busy or the print was too small. It's you never quite know how track changes are going to come out. So I'd actually welcome your feedback on whether you like that format for future changes to, say, the rules and regulations or some other document. But in any event, I think that for what we're doing tonight, we have before us a few changes in the definitions, a few changes in the references to the public records law, because the legislature made some changes. And so now it's time to carry those through to our other documents. And then we also made a couple of changes to our protest procedures, and really nothing significant, but the changes really fall into 2 buckets. First, we have in section 300 of the rules, the goods and services provision. And then in the 400 section of the rules, that's our public contracts, construction, public works, that sort of thing. And so the effort here was to make the protest procedures in each one of those categories the same, to better specify the type of information that a protestant would be required to provide to us, to then have the decision of the public contracting officer or designee. Tom, as the CEO, is that public contracting officer. And then a decision point. If there was some further appeal of that, The PCO could appoint a hearings officer or just send it right to the courthouse if that's where they want to go. If that's what seemed to be the most appropriate thing to do. I went with a hearings officer concept, particularly on the public works construction side of things, because these rules will be used by the program as the Willamette project goes forward. And I found in one of the last projects that I did where there was a major reconstruction of a wastewater facility from, collectors to force mains and trunk sewers to treatment plants and pump stations. Their protests came up on not only on things like who was the low bid, but also on equipment and pre-qualification. And so it always seemed worthwhile if you're getting a protest on a piece of equipment, say something that is at the treatment plant that is a technical piece of equipment. I thought that it would be good to have the ability to at least have a hearings officer of someone who would be technically proficient in that area to help us make a decision. So that's why I put in the hearings officer option if the circumstances seem to line up for it. So with that, I would answer any questions that you have.
The track changes worked fine for me, Clark, but I have to say your memo was a lot more useful. It's really very, very helpful to have that summary information before looking at how it affects the rules themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Duggan here. I agree with Bernice. The track changes is something I'm familiar with. It wasn't really that difficult to sift through, but if it wasn't for the memo giving the scope of what the changes were about, it would have been a lot more a tedious chore to look through it. So thank you, Clark.
Yeah, this is Dick. I agree.
Yeah, you look at the board packet and it's like 348 pages, and I thought, holy camole, what are we doing here? And then when I saw the local contract review board rules, I thought, oh, I see. Do we have other questions from board members?
This is Jim Doe, none from me.
This is Dick, none here.
Todd Sanders, I don't have any questions, and I'm glad we went with the decision that Clark had made. I think that's the right choice.
All right, thanks everybody. In that case, do I have a motion and a second to, acting as the local contract review board, consider adopting resolution 10-20, which is a resolution amending the local contract review board rules?
Jim Duggan, so moved.
Todd Sanders, second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Duggan and a second from Commissioner Sanders. So Debbie, if there's no further discussion, Debbie, would you please provide a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Cool, the motion passes. So just as a side note, should I, instead of saying, Debbie, would you call a roll call vote, should I say, would the recorder call a roll call vote? That would be just that much more formal.
It's up to you.
Okay, well, I am just reading my script here. So moving on, because the motion passed on that one, we have the last thing on the agenda is an informational presentation. And that will be on the phased office reopening plan with a staff report from our risk manager, Mike Jacobs.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, President Bagnell. I'll pull my presentation up here and we'll get going. All right. So just to start, I wanted to talk about TVWD's reopening approach. So Even prior to the governor's stay-at-home order, Tom had recognized really had a lot of foresight to recognize that physical distancing was going to be a good way to protect the health and safety of our employees and help to try to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And so with that focus on health and safety, we started moving folks into a stay-at-home and getting as many people to work from home as possible early on. And at the same time, we needed to make sure that we knew we needed to make sure that we could provide our customers reliable water and service. And so we again recognize the value of that stay-at-home order, and we're going to continue to follow that stay-at-home guidance as we see the state and counties locally moving forward into a phased reopening approach. And we recognize that there is a value in the time between the phasing to assess the outcomes of that reopening and make sure we're seeing positive outcomes and not jumping into anything too quickly. So again, following that guidance from our local public health officials and making sure our community is ready to reopen as we continue to look at our ability to reopen our office. So a little bit of background on the governor's reopening framework. The governor laid out some prerequisites that counties needed to meet before they could start relaxing their restrictions. Those things included increasing screening and testing of symptomatic individuals, really having the ability to contact trace any new cases that may come up, and our health systems had to be sufficiently staffed and have the sufficient PPE in order to provide care to folks that we may see a surge after these phases of reopening, and wanted to make sure that we had that care in place in case that were to happen. So currently no Portland metro area counties have met that phase 1 requirement. Washington County estimates that now we're hearing that they may apply as early as this Friday with the intent of trying to reopen in the 1st of June. The prerequisite that they're still trying to accomplish is to get enough contact tracers on staff to be able to meet the governor's prerequisite there. But they're working towards that, and we expect to see them qualify for that phase 1 reopening sometime the 1st of June, maybe at the latest the middle of June. So what does phase 1 reopening mean to our response? So basically, based on the guidelines that are being issued as part of phase 1, one of those being telecommuting is still recommended when feasible. Our current operational strategy, we don't intend to have anything change there at this time. So what that means is we're going to have as many people working from home as feasible, and there's a number of folks, really over half of our folks, if you look at the counts, are able to work from home at this point. Our field workers are going to continue to work in single units, as Andrew mentioned in his presentation. All of our field units have been issued and assigned a vehicle, and they're out doing work that's able to be done with one person and one vehicle and the resources they can carry there. That helps them maximize social distancing, maintain their own bubble when they're here, and be able to work independently. We do some critical and multi-unit work on a pre-authorized basis that goes to the EOC. We've developed a job safety analysis process that crew leads will submit the need to do critical multi-unit work, and then we will work through the physical distancing requirements that are necessary to accomplish that work and make sure everybody's has an understanding, and we are able to train our folks on any changes in their normal work process that need to be implemented before they go out and start doing that work. We also, for this type of work, have a safety monitor that is out there and their only purpose is to make sure that our crews, as they're completing the work, are able to maintain social distancing and adhering to the social distancing requirements. So while all of these changes have gone on, as you've heard mentioned earlier tonight, our staff continues to do incredible work, and a lot of important work is being done. We provided Sarah Alton with our engineering group, built a great dashboard that I know that she's presented to you in earlier meetings and you've had access to. That represents not everything, but a number of things that we're doing to create that reliable water source and customer service that we do, and just really acknowledges that even in these interesting times where we have to change the way we do work, staff is still really doing that work, and we're able to keep an eye on that and look at that and really recognize staff. We have all staff briefings daily, and we try to recognize the good work that they're doing in those meetings. So with phase 2, when they look at the phased approach, what they're going to be looking for is that for 21 days, they'll be able to maintain positive health outcomes. So they'll continue to see declining cases and continue to see our healthcare systems being able to maintain capacity. And if that's true, then the county can apply for a phase 2 of the reopening. That would relax guidelines potentially more. They haven't issued the guidelines, so this is all subject to change as we get closer, as things have been changing through this event relatively often. But right now, what they're saying is that this would be an opportunity where we'd be able to potentially bring more staff back into the office. This would also be during phase 2, a time where we could look at reopening our lobby, as the schedule for its completion, it would fit into this time frame as well. So that would again put this at the end of June, 1st of July, that we would expect to see phase 2 being a possibility.
So Mike, I've got a question. I think you just said this, does that mean the lobby remodel will be complete by the end of June?
So yeah, great question. And I just heard from our facilities maintenance person, Colin Fleming, today that the current schedule is June 22nd right now. That is still subject to change. They're waiting for some of the components to still come in. But that's what we know right now, is that.
And are we going to be having, well, as I understand it, they call it a mask dispenser for Max trains and buses, but it's really just a box with masks in it. Are we going to be supplying that for customers just in case, or will our shields be sufficient?
Yeah, so I think the really good thing about the lobby remodel that you had mentioned earlier was that we will have a real definite physical barrier there between our customer service representatives and customers. And so that'll protect both us and our customer. And even we're able to, as part of this remodel, separate the HVAC systems there. So that physical barrier will protect, for the most part, any kind of airborne issues that may come. We'll still have documents that may potentially be passed back and forth that we'll need to provide PPE to our employees for. We hadn't talked about putting a mask dispenser for customers because of that physical barrier that's there, but again, that's still a dynamic thing, and that could change depending on how we, working with our customer service teams, how we decide to roll that out. Did that answer your?
Mike, can I add something?
Sure.
This is Carrie Pack. We also have customers, if we decide to open the lobby, there'll be additional customer base that may be coming to the lobby. So, we'll be working with EOC to address various different kinds of customer types. So we've got the general customers that are coming in to pay their bills and other issues, but we also have developers and contractors and all kinds of folks that come through, and we'll be working with EOC to make sure that we have only protection for the customers that would be coming to visit us, but also customers that would have to come back to the backside into engineering or within the kiosk in the front office. So it's just some level of thinking through that we have to complete before we open up the lobby for the public, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually, thank you, Carrie. That's actually where I was coming from, and I didn't articulate very well, because there are a lot of people that come into the lobby that's not all they do is go into the lobby. They end up going back into engineering and talking with you guys about development plans or SDCs or various things. And so be good to have some masks to give out.
This is Dick. Micah, do you have any idea if the work at home is going to continue after this is all over?
When we go into phase 2, is that what you're asking?
What I guess what I'm asking is when this whole COVID thing is over, and everybody can come back into the office, how many people are we going to just say, hey, just continue working at home, it's working fine?
Yeah, Commissioner Schmidt, I don't have an answer to that. That's something that I know we're working on. Teleworking policies that will be more long-term. We have temporary policies in place at this point, but those are all still questions that we'll need to work through and answer as we move forward through this.
This is Tom. I will say, we are having those discussions, and I think we're already hearing from some staff about, hey, we are getting everything done that we were getting done. Is it really necessary to go back to what we were structured? So we are just beginning to have those conversations. What's that look like if we were to allow a different work from home policy than what we've had historically? There certainly could be some financial benefits to the district in considering that, in terms of needing, not so much at our main office, but more at the PMO. There's a potential that you could need a little less space there and reduce our monthly overhead. But again, those would be discussions that we're going to have, and those will be over the course of months to know what we do.
And I'm glad you're having those discussions, and I would encourage you to please include all supervisors in those discussions, because one of the things that, in my experience with TVWD is that, particularly in finance and accounting, there were a lot of people who could work very effectively from home, but the impact, if you will, the effect on other staff who were in the office was difficult, because all of the walk-up traffic that would normally be dealt with by the person who's working at home falls to the people who are not working at home. So it's a wonderful option, and it's something we should certainly consider, but we also need to think about what the effect is on the employees who are in the office and who are dealing with all of the extra work from having to deal with the walk-up traffic that the telecommuters are not dealing with.
Yeah, I understand that. See, part of what I've been reading about that is diminishing traffic, which is around here a big deal. And I was just curious as to whether any conversations were happening regarding that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and because it's we have been bursting at the seams, and to the extent that we don't need more office space because more people can telecommute, it's all good stuff. It just needs a comprehensive look.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, and that's why this would not be any kind of rush decision. This will be something that we'll talk about in the coming months, and part of that discussion is making sure that if we were going to allow that we have clear metrics that we can follow, that aren't that following the metrics don't add additional workload. So that we can actually know that, the work is actually getting done. We have to have some way to monitor that. And so, that would all have to be part of that, making sure we're not artificially shifting workload to just other people who can't work from home.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you.
This is Jim Doan. I'd just like to make a comment if I could. I want to make sure that working from home doesn't become a reason to not continue the seismic upgrading of the headquarters office. We're about a third done on the seismic upgrades, and I want to make sure that that continues.
As far, I would have to have Carrie Pack respond to that, because I'm pretty sure we haven't changed the schedule on that, Carrie, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, we haven't changed schedule. We actually have the headquarter facility plan on the list of projects to tackle, I think in the coming biennium, if not next year. So yeah, no worries about moving forward with that. The reason, if I can just digress just a tiny bit, Commissioner Doan, the reason we wanted to do a facility plan for the headquarters is not only for the seismic retrofitting that we need to do for the building itself, but we wanted to look at the whole yard to see how best to operate with the what we know is going to be needed for additional operations space with the WWSS coming online. So we're going to take a kind of a slow step back a little bit, because I wasn't ready for this. My thoughts are a little bit out there, so sorry about stepping around here. But we already have set of plans that we have identified structural needs that needs to happen. Rather than moving forward with the structural rehab right now, we want to take a step back and look at the whole system, whole yard and the facility as a unit to see how best to not only address the seismic retrofitting, but also to figure out whether we need additional yard spaces for additional equipment that we're going to need for maintaining WWSS. So we're taking a step back only to have a little bit more comprehensive look at what the needs are. And that is still on schedule to be completed. I think it's either this biennium or starting next biennium.
Right.
Thank you very much. That was very reassuring. I just didn't want people to lose track of the fact that if we had half the staff working from home, we still needed to protect the half that was still here. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Dunn, if I could add one other thing, because it's relevant to the seismic thing, is one of the things that this whole event has done that I don't know that we initially realized is being in this extended operation of an EOC, all staff, we've all learned a lot, and learning how to be able to respond, be able to keep workers safe when they can't make it back to the office. It's been a really valuable opportunity, I think, for all district staff to really get a better grip of how the ICS structure works and the reporting structures. So it's been an extended, as some of us have said, a very real life tabletop exercise. And I think that the lessons that we are learning through this will also benefit us in terms of having to ever respond to a seismic event in the future.
Thank you. I'm reassured that the district took what started out to be lemons and turned it into lemonade and turned it into a very good experience. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a wonderfully positive point of view on it. I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, what a great opportunity to exercise the EOC and the ICS and all the other alphabet stuff that we're doing. And when you're not in a complete panic mode, I think that's extraordinarily useful education. And poor Mike, he was like completely diverted from his presentation. So maybe we should get back to that.
No, thank you for the great discussion. Yeah, so as I had mentioned in phase 2, we will have the opportunity to potentially bring more staff in. And so what the EOC has been working on recently is supporting that return and developing systems to support the return of more employees being able to return to the office and that opening of the office to the public. So how we've been doing that is we started with just looking at how we can maintain physical distancing within the office environment. And so the team has been doing a physical distancing analysis, taking out tape measures, measuring workspaces, and identifying those spaces that we're not able to maintain physical distancing. And then we're taking those spaces and trying to come up with, to reconfigure them and set them up in a way where we can maintain physical distancing. And so that's been a really good exercise that the team's been going through, and we continue to work through that. We've been putting floor markings down and testing floor markings to delineate appropriate physical distancing, especially in open environments where we don't have cube walls as physical barriers. We want to make sure, like our operator teams, and this is our customer service area, and really as we start measuring things and laying it out, it's amazing how much space, how much 6 feet takes up of an office when you're trying to maintain everybody's distancing. And so the tape is a real good reinforcement for employees to see just how far back they have to stay. We're also looking at each room and identifying the appropriate room occupancy. Generally, our personal offices are going to be one-person offices to be working in for any amount of time at all. But then we're also identifying specific locations where people can come into an office and meet for a short meeting, a short private meeting, and so we're establishing those room occupancies so it's very clear to for employees to see whether they're getting to be too many or they shouldn't be add any more to a room. This also applies to our community rooms, like our restrooms, for instance. We're going to put on our larger restrooms, our restrooms that are in our main area. We'll be putting a maximum occupancy of 2 on that, and because in most of our offices you can see in, or the door will be open that you'll be able to tell that somebody's in there. Our restrooms, obviously, you can't do that. So we're trying out systems to allow people to understand how many people are in there. So right now we're testing these light system that you would hit with your elbow when you walk in, and it would light up. And if both lights are on, then that would tell employees to find another restroom, or that restroom's otherwise occupied, so they need to find another restroom or wait. And our break rooms are generally closed. We're not allowing people to take lunch right now in the break rooms. They do have access to the sink and refrigerator and microwave, but we don't want people gathering or in those break rooms. It's too hard to maintain physical distancing in those spaces as people are moving around. Lots of signs and markings. So anytime we're trying to change work practices, we're gonna establish signs and markings to really clearly communicate the expectation throughout the facility. We're going to have a written plan. I'm working on that right now, and that written plan will really provide definition to these things these strategies that we're developing to maintain social distancing, and define some of the things like we talked about earlier, how visitors will come into the office and what kind of things we want to, what kind of guidelines we want to have for visitors that do need to come beyond into our workspace. We're developing training materials that will support employees coming back to the office. One of the things that we've done is we've developed a script. We're going to internally develop a brief orientation video that we'll be able to upload to our online training provider. And then we'll be able to share that with employees prior to them coming back to the office, so they can actually see the things that we're talking about with them, and that we'll send them in writing, and they'll see these things actually in place and see what the work environment looks like before they show up, because it'll be a lot to absorb to see these signs and markings here. Also with face coverings, and want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to provide our employees and their families with face coverings. we will be asking employees to wear those where they can't maintain physical distancing to be consistent with the guidance that's out there. We want to make sure that if they can't maintain physical distancing, they have access to face coverings, have those face coverings with them, and are able to use those both in our field and in the office. So the new lobby design, as we talked about earlier, will allow us to protect staff and also customers as they come in. And so it's perfect timing, actually, that's going to be done in the time that it will be done. There'll also be some other logistics that we'll work through in phase 2 planning, things like updating our telework and leave policies to address some of the issues we talked about earlier. And then also we're going to make some facilities adjustments. Specifically, we're, for instance, a good example of that is our HVAC system. We're going to double the exchanges with the HVAC system and keep the fresh air turned over. There's guidance that we can follow to make sure that we're getting as much fresh air into the building as possible when we have more folks in here. Also, we'll be coordinating with our Willamette Water Supply Program office, project management, because we do have some facilities. I mean, that facility is a facility that we don't have direct control over, so we'll be coordinating with them and supporting them and trying to achieve some of the cleaning practices and the HVAC system exchange rates that we're trying to achieve. Another thing is that we anticipate that if we continue to move through this phasing, we may have an opportunity in July where we could have board meetings, but we need to work through some logistics and some planning related to holding board meetings, because the configuration that we all are used to wouldn't allow for physical distancing. So we need to do some work on, and I've talked to our facilities folks about that, about how we would lay out if we intended to hold a board meeting there, and then also work through the process on how we would give public access to those board meetings and help them maintain physical distancing. So those are all things that we'll continue to work through and develop as we work towards this phased reopening. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We have other questions from board members? Oh, sorry, I've got an echo.
None from me. Good luck with everything, Mike. Wow, there were no classes you could have taken for this.
No, that's true.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This has been fascinating, and thank you for responding to all of our questions along the way. I don't think we have any other items on the agenda unless there's something I am unaware of. So with that, I think we shall adjourn.
Cool. This is Dick. Thank you, folks.
Thanks a lot, everybody.